Hello, everyone. My name is Spencer Walsh. Welcome to today's show. We have a good one for you, as always. On the show today, we are sticking with some of the latest news coming out of Israel and the Gaza Strip, where 6,500 Palestinians now have been killed in Gaza. We'll give you the full update on that. Also on the show today, the House has finally elected a speaker. We do finally have a government right now in Washington, so more Israeli aid can be turned out at maximum velocity. And it turns out the speaker they ended up selecting was a hard-right, anti-LGBTQ, pro-stop-the-steal, hardcore Republican out of Louisiana by the name of Mike Johnson. So in other words, pretty much the medium member of the House GOP caucus. Also on the show today, we will wrap up with two stories. One of President Joe Biden's remarks, and really showing how the grounds for truth are so rapidly shifting with Israeli propaganda in this conflict as they continue to get more desperate. And speaking of Israeli propaganda, the New York Times poking a major hole, stopping just short of saying the hospital bombing was done by Israel. They completely break down and completely disprove another one of the key pieces of evidence Israel used to justify their case that Palestinians bombed the hospital by accident. Pretty crazy situation. We will get into it all. Newsflash. All right, so we are going to quickly really give you some very interesting stuff coming out of the UN. That seems to be pretty much the biggest, drama for the moment, at this point in time. So it really is kind of a remarkable situation. This is from the UN Security Council. So the UN Security Council, this is from Al Jazeera, an editor there. Abu Bakr al-Shamahi. The UN Security Council continues to be unable to find a consensus, with several resolutions being voted down in the past week. The U.S. and Russia have led two separate efforts at bringing forth resolution, but both have found their text proposed by the other to be unacceptable and have used their veto power to prevent the resolution from being passed. So pretty much, if you don't know how the UN Security Council works, U.S. or Russia can essentially just shut down anything from happening. And I really think people should look up, if you don't know, how many vetoes the United States has used to protect Israel in the UN Security Council, which, I don't know. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, which is why I'm kind of telling you to look it up, but it is a lot. More than any other country is used to protect any other country, for sure, by a lot there. So yeah, the U.S. has finally called for a humanitarian pauses, but not a ceasefire, which is really just ridiculous, because it's just like, you're not even enforcing, because Israel, does have a lot of, susceptibility to U.S. influence. I think we've seen that from remarks even from, Yoav Gallant, who's one of the most pro-aggression, most aggressive members of the Israeli cabinet, just, put it politely. He even was like, we got to listen to the U.S. to some extent here. They're funding our bombs and stuff. Like, we can't really tell them no. And Biden is really not even pushing for anything, even for them to respect what they said about not bombing the South and letting civilians stay in the South. Of course, now they're going to say, terrorists are going to the South now. It's like, again, it's just unimpeachable. It's like you cannot in any way defend that without saying something absolutely heinous. And there's been so many positions where I think Israel has had to find themselves doing or getting put in that, situation of just saying something really just heinous sounding to the average American or Western ear, which is why we're seeing probably the biggest polling shift pro-Palestine in history, which is quite remarkable. Brazil attempted a middle-of-the-road approach on October 18th, condemning all acts of violence, including those committed by Hamas, while calling for humanitarian pauses. Meanwhile, the Russian resolution concentrated on pushing for a ceasefire. They attempted, again, a middle-of-the-road approach on October 18th, condemning all acts of violence, including those committed by Hamas, while calling for humanitarian pauses. The U.S. vetoed that resolution, despite the backing from the majority of the UN, of the Security Council's members, with its representatives saying that it did not mention Israel's right to self-defense, and U.S. diplomacy needed a chance to play out. The time-honored, effective U.S. diplomacy, which, again, some really kind of remarkable stuff here on this Russia-led resolution, and especially, a lot of people are talking about the UAE's response at this point in time. So Lena Zaki Nusseibeh, who is the UAE envoy to the UN, she is part of a country that has been long time very, very much tied to the U.S., obviously recently normalizing relations with Israel, and you can see here, she is not in any way liking what she is seeing. And she says the most pressing needs of Palestinians, she told the UN Security Council, I don't know, maybe she's been in touch with them, I don't know, as outlined by the UN and NGOs, are an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, the release of all captives, safe, sustained, and at-scale humanitarian access, fuel for hospitals and desalination plants, water, and adherence to international law. She said, yesterday we heard dozens of statements imploring this council to assign the same value to Palestinian life as it does to Israeli life. We cannot allow any equivocation on this point. There is no hierarchy of civilian lives. These must be the priorities of any resolution adopted by this council. So a lot of abstentions, which is very interesting on this. I don't really know how much the UN, that's very common at the UN. So, but anyway, Albania, Brazil, Ecuador, France, Ghana, Japan, Malta, Mozambique, and Switzerland all abstaining on this Russian-led resolution urging humanitarian ceasefire. China, Gabon, Russia, and the UAE are voting for it. And UAE considered a very, very close U.S. ally, so that is a big deal there for sure, that we will, kind of continue to follow. So Robert Wood, who's the alternate ambassador to the UN, told the Security Council after the United States voted against Russia's resolution. I'll keep this short because, frankly, it's not worth wasting any more time discussing Russia's bad faith resolution. Colleagues, the United States could not support yet another Russian resolution that was put forward with no consultation, that failed to reflect, I don't want to consult, it's weird, but that fails to reflect the realities on the ground. It's disappointing that Russia would rather try and score political points and further divide this council than address the current urgent needs of Israelis and Palestinians. I mean, I don't know what could be more urgent for anyone than a ceasefire. I'll say this again, the United States stands ready to work with all member states that are genuinely committed to advancing peace and security. We must put the interests of the region and the world above all else. So I think it seems like there is a very, clear effort and clear desire by the United States to kind of freeze these people out, freeze the Russians out, which is very much not surprising. It really is quite a big deal. The Gulf countries' position, according to Al Jazeera senior analyst Marwan Bashar, said the UAE's, this kind of gives you a sense of how bad it was from a little bit more of an expert voice. Said the UAE's position in the UN Security Council vote was almost unpredictable. The Gulf countries' position tells you how badly the U.S. draft resolution has been kind of met and has been ensuring the minimum humanitarian needs of Palestinians in Gaza are met, Bashara said. Some interesting news also kind of today coming out of Israel, where the Israeli army says it has intercepted a missile fired from Lebanon. The Israeli military says it was part of a surface-to-air missile fired from Lebanon towards an army drone. It added on social media in a post that was responded by striking the source of the launch. So, sounds about right. Another really tragic news kind of coming out of Gaza. Al Jazeera Arabic presenter and former Gaza correspondent Tamir al-Mishal, said that he, in reaction to this kind of broader news, that the Al Jazeera Arabic, longtime correspondent, Wael Dadua, was killed in a Israeli strike, including his wife. The family members of him, Wael Dadua, was killed in a Israeli strike, including Dadua's wife, his son, and his daughter. Really, really horrific situation there. And apparently, according to this other presenter, he says he believes that he was a target. He has been targeted. A family of a journalist has been targeted, and he's not the only one during the war. We're talking about more than 20 journalists who have been killed with their families. Michel said his daughter, grandson were civilians. From my experience and my knowledge of this great friend and colleague, Wael will continue his coverage. Al Jazeera coverage won't stop. This is our responsibility. So big, obviously credit to him. As we continue to see the kind of targeting of journalists here, the International Federation of Journalists has called the targeting of journalists and their families at the besieged Gaza Strip shocking. Aidan White, who is the IFJ's General Secretary for 25 years, told Al Jazeera that the killing of correspondent Wael Dadua's family in Gaza will shock journalists around the world. Really kind of remarkable stuff, and clearly showing how people are so very much kind of like inflamed by this, and just realizing that they are, nowhere in Gaza is safe. Nowhere for anybody is safe. You could be somebody who's very much closely tied to the West. You could be even a UN worker. Even the people we think are the most out of bounds are getting killed again and again and again, proving this is just really not a mistake. And it's just a very, 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 crazy situation. Here is, I want to get some video to you of Wael Dadua. Dadua. I'm definitely not saying that right. So it is really kind of a pretty. This is how it sounded. This is from as he kind of walked in and kind of found this news out. It wasn't on TV, but he was being filmed with a bunch of kind of fellow journalists kind of following him in their flap jackets, clearly labeled press. Does not stop them, obviously, from being targeted, but here's how that sounded. So, yeah, he's clearly, he's walking through the hospital. He's very obviously just distressed, looked like he's, crying. Obviously, very unsurprising. I don't know if he says something at the end of this video, but I think he said something about, really. We're seeing the kind of this video come again and again. This is how it sounded when the news came out on Al Jazeera.
To speak to you. I was just thinking about just a week ago, he was at that hospital, Al Ahli hospital, where hundreds of Palestinians died. And he kept on saying there is no safe place for people in Gaza. And indeed, there was no safe place for his own family.
Wow.
And it's really something that just came through my mind immediately, because he has been conveying this message war after war. This is the 5th war in Gaza. And Wael has always been there trying to make sure that the whole world understands. And then this tragedy hits him so closely.
It is also
this is Wael.
Our choice. It is our choice.
Through a translator.
We are standing our ground with our heads held high, down with the occupation forces and down with Netanyahu.
And now, they're showing him on the TV, kind of going through.
We just listened to an interview, or a bit of an interview that was just conducted with Al Jazeera Arabic correspondent Wael al-Dahdu in Gaza. This happening moments after his wife, son, and daughter were confirmed to have been killed in an Israeli airstrike. We can talk now with Marwan Bishara, Al Jazeera's senior political.
Yeah, so that was the guy that they'll also cited there. Really just horrific situation here. And in the first act, it's kind of funny here. In the first act of U.S. House of Representatives, the newly elected Speaker Mike Johnson has brought to the floor a pro-Israel resolution. The bill, which Johnson described as being in support of our dear friend Israel, condemns Hamas without mentioning civilians or any calls for restraint. Not a surprise there whatsoever. So that is for sure. So the vote passed with 412 legislators voting in favor, 10 voting against, 6 voting present, and 5 not present. So that is actually very interesting. We need to hold on a minute. Okay, so here we go. 9 Democrats opposed the resolution. Jamal Bowman, Andre Carson, Cori Bush, Al Green, Summer Lee, AOC, Ellen Omar, Delia Ramirez, Rashid Tlaib, and Republican Thomas Massey of Kentucky, believe it or not. 6 other Democrats voted present on the resolution: Greg Cesar, Joaquin Castro, Nidhi Velasquez, Aaron Presley, Troy Garcia, and Pramila Jayapal. So pretty much, who you would expect. Nothing really too crazy, in terms of people that I see kind of missing from that. But it is, unless I'm, really having a bit of a brain fart at the moment. But the vote really does underscore staunch support for Israel within the chamber, where only a handful of U.S. legislators have called thus far for a Gaza ceasefire, which seems more than a lot of other countries in Western Europe, to be clear. Meanwhile, a report by the Israeli newspaper Haaretz has highlighted Johnson's ties to the Israeli far right. The evangelical legislator traveled to Israel in 2020 in a trip organized by a group whose leader lives in a legal Israeli settlement, according to the newspaper. This is somebody who believes that, when all the Jews go to Israel, the end of the apocalypse will come. Just look up the rapture, giving you a lot of homework on today's show. Let's get to him. Representative Mike Johnson, he has won his election on Wednesday as the 56th Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, putting an end to 3 weeks of chaos that left the chamber without a leader and put Republican divisions on display. Republicans elevated Johnson, a little-known and deeply conservative lawmaker, after a tumultuous fight. It began after the hard right ousted Speaker Kevin McCarthy and raged on as the divided House GOP nominated him and then quickly discarded 3 other candidates to succeed him. There's a very funny kind of 3-slide tweet going around of Elise Stefanik, who is a House leader, New York House Republican leader. And she was just going through congratulating one after the other, and they're just failing miserably. So Republicans jumped to their feet and applauded Representative Patrick Henry, the interim speaker, after he declared that Mr. Johnson was the duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives. So it is going to be, very, very interesting. And it's hard not to see how, some of these same problems, even if he does have, such good unanimous Republican support, that's not going to be any kind of problem for him down the road, for sure. I highly doubt it. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how he manages some of the same, or trying to avoid some of the same problems that we've seen, Kevin McCarthy fall into, Jim Jordan fall into, and all these people who try to, ensure maximum support of a very divided caucus. He's got that budget situation coming up. He's in for a very, kind of hard time in terms of leadership as it is. But, it's going to be really interesting to see now what he will do, that there is, that there really is a, that he has the opportunity to put in very, very hard right kind of ideology, or hard right, cultural war laws, kind of, run the House like, Ron DeSantis would Florida essentially here. In a speech that traced his ascent up the political ladder in Louisiana to Congress, Johnson pledged to restore the people's faith in this House. He cited sending aid to Israel, fixing the broken southern border, and reining in federal spending as his top legislative priority. So kind of giving a signal of how tough he's going to be towards Biden and the budget coming up. Very Christian, very right wing, pretty much a great representative of the median in terms of the House Democrats in Congress here. In a nod to the simmering frustrations among the hard right flank of the party that ultimately deposed McCarthy, Johnson pledged that his office is going to be known for decentralizing power. I mean, McCarthy tried to do that. He gave one person the opportunity to call for a, motion to vacate, as Matt Gaetz did, sending off these 3 weeks of chaos. He is somebody who has decentralized a lot of power, so much so that it led to his demise. It almost seems like, you got to do some sort of a purge, some sort of a, discipline of certain figures, and just, show them that, no means no. I feel like if that's the kind of a very, maybe a little bit, on the selling side, but I feel like that is the only way to get these people in line, because they're just going to keep doing what they're been doing. Not that they're so emboldened, they know that a lot of their tactics can work very, very well. Elected in 2016, Johnson is the most junior lawmaker in decades to become Speaker. He may also be the most conservative. Johnson is the former chairman of the Republican Study Committee and sponsored legislation to effectively bar the discussion of sexual orientation or gender identity at any institution serving children younger than 10 that receives federal funds. So, definitely somebody who's going to, be trying to pick up that culture war stuff, which is, probably honestly, as long as they control the Senate, which is, something you can never really entrust to the Democrats, relatively good political news, because it'll just make them look like, absolute kind of further continue to marginalize and put that 2022 stench on Republicans. Democrats were scathing in their assessment of Johnson's ascent to the speakership. Pete Aguilar of California, the Democratic Conference chairman, said that the speaker fight had evolved into a contest over who can appease Donald Trump. At that line, a handful of hard-right Republicans stood and applauded. They know who they are playing to, those Republicans, and they are not playing to the broader country at large, which I think has been a problem for them and will continue to be a problem for them. They heckled mainstream Republicans facing tough re-election contests next year in swing districts. Mainstream is a little bit of a misnomer there from the New York Times, but after they rose to vote for Johnson, after Representative Mike Lawler and Mark Molinaro, both of New York, voted for the hard-right Louisiana Republican, a Democrat could be heard yelling out, "Bye-bye." Mondaire Jones, I feel like, could pull, another Sean Patrick Maloney, so it'll be intriguing to see for sure. Johnson immediately faces a host of challenges we talked about. He's confronting a mid-November deadline to pass a measure to fund the government to avert a shutdown. He will also need to lead his conference into a deeply divided conference over, the foreign policy questions with regard to Israel and Ukraine. I think, as long as they're tied together, Israel and Ukraine will both be approved pretty easily. I think that's not going to be too much of a problem. And ask whether he was concerned, given the Republican speaker's history, that he would try again to overturn the election in 2024. Biden answered flatly, no, just like I was not worried the last campaign would overturn the election. Johnson was able to bring together both the party's hard-right and mainstream flanks that had taken turns taking speaker candidates in the past, but it was also clear that Republicans were eager to put an end to a week-long spectacle of mass dysfunction and paralysis that many had said left their constituents distraught. So a little bit of a distraught situation for the Republicans, but I think it will be kind of continuously a problem down the road. That is certainly for sure, because this is just how it goes. We have some more clips here to get to. This is we're going to go on to our kind of next story here, and it really is an incredible situation and representation of what we have seen very often, which is a shifting of what is accepted as true and what is accepted as reliable information, even more towards a pro-Israel bias as they get increasingly desperate about this, and it comes from really Joe Biden himself, and really just kind of shifting the terrain under us here. This is him kind of on CNN.
Palestinians are telling the truth about how many people are killed. I'm sure innocents have been killed. And it's a price.
All right, sorry, that was some bad audio there in the minute. He's speaking quietly, though. Let's start from the beginning.
Palestinians are telling the truth about how many people are killed. I'm sure innocents have been killed. And it's a price of waging a war. I think we should be incredibly careful. I think the Israelis should be incredibly careful to be sure that they're focusing on going after the folks that are propagating this war against Israel. And it's against their interest when that doesn't happen. But I have no confidence in the number that the Palestinians are using.
Excuse me, no confidence in the number the Palestinians are using there. It is really kind of a remarkable thing for even a U.S. politician to say, because we have seen there's been a lot of conflicts in this situation, and time again in the past, the number has been reported without fail, without question, even from the Hamas-run health ministry. People are saying that now like it's some sort of big indictment, when they have cited that same health ministry every single other time since 2006 to report when Palestinians are killed by Israel, if they do report it at all. Like, this has been a number that's consistently been used, and why is it stopped? Probably a surprisingly direct kind of path of messages, I would bet, translating down from people maybe in the U.S. government to, you see Biden coming in and saying it here too as well, in this mutual desire between the Israeli governments and the U.S. governments to just protect the state of Israel at all costs, and this kind of, sharing that we know that they do, and the narratives that we see that, see how they spread, time and time again. This is something that it has become very, very clear in the past to say that, this is starting to look really, really bad. People are like, wow, these are really increasing numbers. And, they always report as well how many were women, how many were children, and this is a very, it's literally telling you how many people died. Of course, it's going to have a very, emotional effect, and they know that, they realize that these are the same people that didn't want hostages because it would look, back, because it would look too good for the other side in a propaganda war. Do we really think that they would just, say, okay, now we got to start casting doubt on the Palestinian death toll that we have, unfailingly supported and believed for the past, however many years, and we have to start challenging that, because again, it's making them look bad. And it does not, by any stretch, beggar belief that would be a reality in that situation. But it's just a, when you start having CNN, when you start having the president amplifying this message, you are really going to, that is a remarkably big change from past years. And it shows how already, just these people saying something can shift the grounds of what is true and what is accepted truth very, very quickly in a way that people really, I think, don't oftentimes see coming or really even process. All right, this is also a really kind of remarkable story coming out of the New York Times Visual Investigations Unit. This is Eric Toller on Twitter. So he says, Israeli and U.S. intelligence officials believe that a projectile captured on video shortly before the Achli Arab Hospital explosion was a Palestinian rocket. New York Times visual investigation found that object was launched from the direction of Israel. Again, what other object would it have been than some type of, projectile, some sort of explosive, and was likely unrelated to the deadly blast, meaning it hit somewhere else. So as we can see, this they kind of show in this first tweet thread this, three angles of this projectile exploding in the air, then kind of getting intercepted, exploding in the air, and then obviously then they don't show it, but then a few seconds later there is the kind of rocket explosion. An IDF spokesperson went on CNN and BBC with a printed out screenshot from Al Jazeera, the Al Jazeera live stream showing this projectile, claiming that it was a rocket that hit the hospital. We also believe that American officials are incorrectly assessing this to be a Palestinian rocket. We geolocated 5 videos that show the projectile launch from the north, south, east, and the west. By drawing lines of perspective, 3 of which can be seen here, we assessed that this project was launched from the Israeli city of Nahal Oz. From footage from Al Jazeera, footage from CCTV in Tel Aviv, footage from Channel 12. They kind of geolocated it from multiple different angles and were able to tell where that was coming from. And then, from there, they really were able to tell it was just, right over that border and from into Gaza. And you could see the approximate area where the mid-air detonation was visible in the videos was roughly around the border between, kind of East Gaza and Western Israel, kind of centrally located, almost parallel to the Al-Achli Arab Hospital. But then when it falls to the ground, it very well is, quite far. You can see in this map in this Twitter thread that it is quite far away. We cannot say with confidence what exactly this projectile is, but we know that there is at least one Iron Dome launch site in nearly the same location that overlaps. So it was an Iron Dome projectile that was there to intercept the rocket. So that overlaps this from the sight lines we drew from the 5 videos. The site was still present in satellite imagery this year. This projectile may have been launched in reaction to the barrages of rockets from Gaza. A timeline. So here it says this suggested timeline. So Palestinian launches rockets from Israel at approximately 6:59 p.m. The projectile detonates after the launch, and the explosion, and this is what we saw, the explosion occurs at the Al-Achli Hospital 25 seconds after launch, about 7 seconds, 7 seconds, no, I'm crazy, 8 seconds, 7.5, I guess, after the detonation of, then the explosion occurs, but you can see it is, more over the border, as opposed to Al-Achli, which is obviously well into the territory of the Gaza Strip. So, about 2.5 seconds passed from the last Palestinian rocket fired and an Israeli projectile to the hospital explosion. There is no visual evidence we have found that directly links these events to the blast at Al-Ahli Hospital. Just another interception. The projectile launch from Israel detonates at least 2 miles from the hospital, the border versus the kind of interior of the Gaza Strip, and 25 seconds pass from when the final Palestinian rocket was launched in these videos and the hospital explosion. The situation in the area around the hospital was chaotic that evening. Now, just your live stream of the scene plus other videos show that at least 2 large explosions near the hospital in the minute before the deadly blast. So this was, 2 possible rocket interceptions, and then, maybe, another big blast comes in. The IDF told the Times that it was striking Gaza City that evening, but said that it was not in an area that would endanger the hospital. But 3 days before the blast, 155 millimeter illumination shell, commonly used by the Israeli military and not in use by Palestinian militias, was fired into Al-Ahli Hospital. Hospital administrators said they received warnings from the IDF telling them to evacuate, but obviously they refused. Our analysis does not answer what actually did cause the blast or who was responsible, but it does undercut one of the most publicized pieces of evidence used by both Israeli and American officials. So really very interesting work and important work to, by the New York Times actually putting that out there. Credit to them. But, I think we still definitely, I think it's, obviously not completely conclusive, but we can see the steps. We can see people warming up to accepting the fact that, what we all likely know to be true is true, that Israel did bomb that hospital because, again, another one of these key pieces of evidence will be supported. But, again, will the people who were so pompous when, U.S. intelligence, as it started telling everyone that it was a Palestinian rocket, will they apologize? Will they say, oh, we need serious action now against Israel? No, I highly doubt it. And, for that reason, that on that note, we will end the show. We'll be back Friday.